Greetings, one and all, and welcome once again to Tom's Hit Parade Live. Hope you all are doing great. Hope you guys had a good week and are gearing up for a good weekend. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. And yes, tonight is going to be Spankin Platters, the fall edition of Spankin Platters, my final Spankin Platters of the year. And what was I going to say? Oh, yes. I have to say I did jump the gun a little bit in doing the thumbnail for this video. If you looked at the thumbnail closely enough, you may have seen the Diana Ross album Thank You on CD. Unfortunately, I have to let you know that one I will not be talking about tonight. I got a little bit behind in my listening, but I did get all the listening done that I needed to get for this video, and pretty much all the notes done. So I'll say I couldn't review an album if I hadn't listened to it, right? Right, so anyway, yes, I will be talking about 7 albums. So yes, a pretty loaded list here, and I didn't talk about or mention all the albums that I wanted to talk about. There's just so much stuff came out this year that I was kind of looking forward to and had my eye on or was otherwise interested in. So yes, excuse me. So yes, Spankin Platters, for those of you new to my channel, is my quarterly review of the new and recently released albums that have floated my boat or otherwise appealed to me in various ways. So let me go ahead and get started on this. I've got my notes actually ready this time. Preparation, yay. Anyway, the first 2 albums are actually something of nostalgia trips, old classic favorites of mine. The first one we're talking about, is the new Duran Duran album, Future Past. So, yes, I've been a Duran Duran fan for over 35 years, with the exception of a few years in the late 90s and early 2000s, during which they put out what I feel were their least impressive albums. But by their 2004 release, Astronaut, they'd gotten their second wind. Well, actually, in a way, I guess it was their third wind. And I've been faithfully picking up their albums ever since. In fact, I am so confident that I will enjoy each new Duran Duran album that I don't even listen to the singles beforehand, mainly so as not to spoil anything. And this album, like each of their last 4, has not disappointed me at all. This one particularly captures their classic 80s sound more than any other recent album. The impeccable dance rock grooves, the irresistible hooks, Simon Le Bon's soaring voice, they all seem stronger than they ever have in years. And it takes me right back to their 80s glory days, when they are one of my, as I like to call them, a holy trinity of 80s bands that I have enjoyed ever since then to this day in one form or another. Yes, it takes me right back to their glory days, but there are also elements of their early 90s comeback, the Wedding album, as well as the contemporary touches that have made their 21st century output so enjoyable. Anniversary is a highlight, its title being a subtle reference to the fact that they released their debut album 40 years ago this year. Beautiful Lies may have the best combination of beat and synth hook on the whole album, thanks in large part to producer Giorgio Moroder, a veteran producer. He's in his 80s now, I think. And as if that weren't enough, the song has a sly lyrical nod to their early hit Rio. So it's like, it's just winning all around, honestly. The title track and Wing are 2 of their best ballads since Ordinary World, which was on the Wedding album in '93, I think that was. Nothing Less is another standout track, and Laughing Boy is by far the best of the 3 additional tracks that are exclusive to the deluxe edition of this album. As you can see, this is the square-bound hardcover deluxe version, because, hey, it's Duran Duran, so I had to splurge for the deluxe. Guest vocals by Tove Lo on Give It All Up and the all-female Japanese rock band Chai on More Joy give those 2 tracks extra appeal. The gorgeous piano work by Mike Garson make Falling a wonderful album closer, and also Blur's Graham Coxon provided excellent guitar work and writing assists throughout the entire album as well. So yes, as you can tell from my gushing about this album, it's just fantastic. One of my favorites of the year. Almost definitely going to be in my top 10, top 5 maybe, but yeah, fantastic album. So you've got to check that one out if you haven't yet. And honestly, Duran Duran's Well, nothing for me is going to stand up to Duran Duran's first 3 or 4 albums. Those were their best by far, in my opinion. But hey, this album probably comes as close in several years as any album has to matching their 80s glory days. Next up is, excuse me, water break. I got to remember, I don't have to go so fast because I blocked out an entire hour for this show. So, and I'm only 5 or 6 minutes in. So yeah, I got to pace myself, right? Anyway, the second album I will be talking about today is another nostalgia trip, as I mentioned in the beginning. This is Stedman's Wake, the 9th album by the Connells, and their first album in 20 years. Now, I have been a fan of this Raleigh, North Carolina band for 30 years now, and so you can imagine how happy I was to see them finally come out with another album after 2 decades. And somehow they sound better than they ever have, even after a 20-year recording hiatus. They have been, I think they each have had day jobs, so to speak, during that 20 years. But they do get together and perform, locally in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. They just haven't recorded an album in 20 years until now. Now, 4 of the band members are still the same as they were back in the 80s and 90s. Brothers Mike and David Connell on guitar and bass, respectively, Steve Potek on the keyboards, and Doug McMillan on vocals. And Doug sounds exactly as he did 2 decades ago. They may have lost their 2 original classic members, but their sound has not suffered. I mean, I put this album on, and it was like I was gone. I time warped right back to the 90s. I mean, Doug McMillan's voice has not lost a thing. It's just excellent, just as it always has been. It's kind of like putting on an old sweater that you love, or a comfy pair of shoes. Just that feeling, that nostalgic feeling. To be honest, I'm not sure what most of the song's lyrics are about, and that in a way is a holdover from my youth, maybe when I didn't really pay much attention to the lyrics, but that takes away none of the enjoyment of the album for me. None at all. It's just fantastic. It's nice to hear re-recorded versions of 3 of the songs, Rusted Fields, Gladiator Heart, and Hello Water, after their appearance on their previous album, Old School Dropouts. And that is honestly the only Connells album I did not care for because it sounded like a set of very rough demos. And I actually had purchased it at one point and got rid of it. And now that I know that was not their last album, I kind of want to look for it again. So that's the completest in me. I got it. What can I say? The song Fading In is perhaps my favorite for its finely crafted chorus. And I also really like the title track. Universal Glue is great for its lyrical wordplay involving Cain and Abel. You got to listen to the lyrics on that one. That's just great. The song Stars stands out to me for its inclusion of a trumpet. And that actually, in a way, brings things full circle for my Connells listening. Because there was a trumpet in the first Connells song that I ever heard, which was called Over There. And for whatever reason, I glommed onto that song, and it played a part in me becoming a fan of the band. So as you can imagine, hearing that trumpet in Stars just, again, brought me right back, just like Doug McMillan's voice. So yes, I got to say, this is just an excellent album, possibly more so for me just because I am such a long-time fan of the band. But yeah, it was a long time coming, and it was worth the wait, I've got to say. Worth the 20-year wait for that album to come out. So, yeah, gosh, I'm not even 10 minutes in. I'm just kind of rushing things along here. Of course, this video may be less than an hour long. And hey, all of my videos were only about 20 minutes long back when I was doing pre-recorded videos, so why am I so bent on doing hour-long videos? I don't know. Anyway, coming up on the 3rd of 7 albums that I will be talking about today. Now, as you'll notice, most of the stuff that I am talking about, in fact, all except one album, are on CD. Yes, I have just bought way more CDs this year than I've bought vinyl. Not sure what the reason is for that. But anyway, the third album I'll be talking about today is Optimist, the debut album by Finneas. Now, I have tried to get into Billie Eilish's music, but I just have not been able to. I've tried more than once. I think I've listened to each of her albums more than twice, and they just have not clicked for me for whatever reason. So I was fully prepared to ignore this release, knowing that Finneas is Billie Eilish's brother. I was just kind of assuming that her brother's music would be similar. But after I gave it a listen on Spotify, I was reminded how stupid it is to make such assumptions. Yes, since I had no or low expectations going into this album, I came out of it seriously impressed. While my take on his sister's music was that she stays in the subdued, dark, and semi-depressed ballad gear most of the time, at least that's my impression, as I said, I was pleasantly surprised by how varied Finneas's sonic palette is by comparison here. While there are plenty of subdued songs like Only a Lifetime and Love is Pain, we also get upbeat tracks like Happy Now and the closer How It Ends, and even a gorgeous instrumental classical interlude in the form of Peach's Etude. The opener, A Concert 6 Months from Now, shows how dynamic he can get. It has an explosive second verse which shakes up the song at the midpoint. Excuse me here. So Finneas's lyrical sense is also exceptional here. The kids are all dying, comments on everything from environmental activism to gun control to cancel culture. Perhaps that makes the song a bit unfocused, but in a way that may have been the point, since the internet tends to be really good at scattering and shortening our attention spans. It has that effect on me, I've got to say. Now, as you might imagine, I enjoy the track The 90s, which reminisces which reminisces about a time before the internet. The overly auto-tuned vocals might annoy some people, but they are effective at driving home the 90s homage to the song. Only a Lifetime encourages us not to dwell on the past or worry about the future, and is probably the most beautiful song on the album in terms of melody. I just love that song. I really enjoy the lead-off single, What They'll Say About Us, and Medieval is one of my favorites. I love the lyrics, especially in the bridge at the middle. Fantastic. I mean, that really gives you an idea, a picture of how good Finneas is at songwriting. Around My Neck couples steamy, darkly sexy lyrics with a kind of electro-funk sound. It's hard for me to pin it down and draw a comparison, but it strikes me sort of as a blend of Prince and George Michael, in a way. Any of you who might have a better comparison than that, let me know. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I get from that song. But yes, this is an excellent album. I almost just completely passed it by, and I'm so glad I didn't. I picked it up almost on a whim. I streamed most of it first, obviously. But yes, excellent stuff. Even if you don't like Billie Eilish, don't lump Finneas in with her just because they're siblings. Give Optimist a try. It is an excellent album, gotta say. That one might end up in my top 10. And now we're going to kind of switch gears. This one's going to be a bit of an interesting album for me to review. This is Bill by William Shatner. Yes, this is his 8th album. And seeing as how it had been a whopping 36 years since his super cheesy debut album, The Transformed Man, I had no reason to take his sophomore album Has Been any more seriously when it was released in 2004, at least until I found out that it was produced by Ben Folds and included guest appearances by the likes of Brad Paisley, Joe Jackson, and Henry Rollins. Sure, it had its funny moments, but this time not only was Shatner owning and embracing the cheesiness, but the album was punctuated by moments of deeply personal candor. It seemed to have the right ingredients in the right proportions. It felt inspired and profound in a way, and was one of my favorite albums of that year. So, fast forward to this summer, when I heard that Joe Jonas, of all people, yes, Joe Jonas of the Jonas Brothers, had not only collaborated with Shatner on a new song, but had invited the spry 90-year-old to release a new album on his label. By the time we got the second single and the press release describing the autobiographical approach to this album and its list of guest stars, I was expecting this to be his best album since Has Been. And I know it's dangerous to hold up those kinds of expectations, but in this case, I was not disappointed at all. I thought I knew all that was worth knowing about William Shatner until I heard this album. The next to last track, Tuffy, which is probably my favorite, the most deeply affecting song on the album for me, describes his being repeatedly bullied as a child for being a Jewish kid in a non-Jewish neighborhood. While The Bridge, which with its title you'd think is about the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, actually recounts a near-fatal car accident he was involved in as a young man. The song Masks addresses how the line between the actor and the role they play can feel blurred by the actor himself as well as by the audience. And in the song So Far From the Moon, Shatner recounts the bitter irony of the moon landing taking place in the wake of his own divorce and the cancellation of Star Trek. And that song, by the way, features Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley's kind of a favorite country artist of mine, so anytime that he's in the picture, I kind of pay a little bit of extra attention to it. William Shatner is an avid horseman also, and he expresses his deep affection for the creatures with a short poetic interlude as well as a full-length track, Black Horse. He also ponders the emotional baggage he's carried for decades in the songs Clouds of Guilt and Just Forgive, and contemplates the big questions of life and death in the very fitting album closer, What Do We Know? Now, despite the wide range of genre influences thanks to its guest performers, everything from rock with Joe Walsh, to pop with Joe Jonas, to country with Brad Paisley, to jazz with Dave Koz, to blues and gospel with Robert Randolph guesting on 2 songs, and even a dash of ethnic instrumentation on Thunder and Fire, which features guest appearances by Joan as Policewoman, or a guest appearance, singular, sorry. Not to mention Shatner's spoken word delivery. This album may not be for everyone, but I loved it, and it was surprisingly cohesive despite all the different genres that were packed into here. I think it's his best and most moving album yet, perhaps even better than Has Been. I love this album that much. He suggested in an interview that I read that enough material came out of these sessions to fill a second album. But if this one ends up being the last one he records, in my opinion, he's going out with a bang. I mean, let's face it, he's 91 years old now, so he's not going to be around for a whole lot longer. So, but I am appreciating him while he's here. So yes, this is just fantastic. A very odd album, probably for me to be so fond of, but what can I say? It's just excellent. The album is called Bill by William Shatner, and it is just, it's just amazing. So, excuse me, one more water break. I've gone through 4 albums already, and I'm 20 minutes in. I don't know whether to be proud of being so fast or, the opposite. Anyway, on to the one and only vinyl LP that I will be talking about today, as I get my notes ready here. Here we have, let me put it in, drop the notes and put this in frame. Here we have Jake and Friends by Jake Shimabukuro. He is a ukulele artist, or ukulele, I guess is how you pronounce it properly. Now, as I mentioned when I talked about his previous album Trio last year, put aside all of your preconceptions about the ukulele when it comes to Jake's music. I mean, when you think ukulele, you're thinking Tiny Tim doing the rinky-dink strummy thing. Throw that out the window. Now, I knew I had to get this album as soon as I found out about it, not just because I know what a great musician Jake is and the things he can do with the ukulele, but because of the ridiculously stacked list of guest artists on this album. I mean, you can read them here while I'm talking if you can. Most of the album's songs are covers, about half of which are classic songs. Jack Johnson and Paula Fuga, or is it Fuga, I'm not sure, helped Jake open up the album with a rendition of Stevie Wonder's A Place in the Sun. Beautiful, beautiful song. He brings in Jimmy Buffett for a take on his hit Come Monday, and Warren Haynes appears on an amazing 13-minute rendition of the blues classic On the Road to Freedom. Beatles fans have something to enjoy here. No fewer than 3 songs are given a ukulele-based reimagining, including All You Need Is Love, All You Need Is Love with Ziggy Marley. It's given a nice little breezy reggae treatment. Something featuring Vince Gill and Amy Grant. Fantastic trio, I guess it is, on that song. And A Day in the Life with Yes's John Anderson. So yes, I'm telling you, this thing is just packed with guest artists. On other covers, Jake is accompanied by the artists who originally or most famously recorded the songs themselves. Jesse Colin Young of the Youngbloods classic, Jesse Colin Young of the Youngbloods, guests on the Youngbloods classic Come Together. Bette Midler in a new interpretation of her hit The Rose. Willie Nelson on the Great American Songbook standard Stardust that he recorded 4 decades ago. And Willie's son Lucas on one of his songs, Find Yourself. Now, on the originals side of things, we have a pair of instrumentals, The Gentle and Pretty Sunny Days Ahead, featuring Sonny Landreth, spelled S-O-N-N-Y in both cases, and the aptly titled Smokin' Strings, featuring Billy Strings, as well as the lively Why Not, written by and featuring vocals by Kenny Loggins. And speaking of awesome 80s voices, Michael McDonald comes in. Yes, I'm not done talking about the guest artist yet. Michael McDonald comes in for vocals and ukulele. Yes, he is an ukulele player on the Moody Blues cover, Go Now. As you can see, there is just so much to enjoy on this 16-track doozy of an album. It's mostly light and gentle listening, which you would kind of think goes with the territory when you're talking ukulele, with plenty of reggae and folk-leaning tracks. But Jake and his guests do detour into rock, blues, and even a little bit of psychedelia on this album. So I got to tell you, this was one of the most pleasant surprises. I was kind of hoping for and expecting something wonderful with this album, and I got it. I was not let down at all. It's a fantastic album, and it was worth buying on vinyl for me. It's a 2 LP set, but of course, with 16 tracks, you got 4 tracks on each side, so it's not wasting space or hogging up space. The 2 platters were very much worth it. So yes, a fantastic album, I've got to say. Now, the last 2 albums I'm going to be talking about are both covers albums. So if any of you out there just hate covers albums, well, I suppose you could click away from the video, but hey, I love these albums, so maybe you want to hear what I have to say about them. Anyway, the first one I'm going to be talking about is, sorry for switching back and forth. We have Colin Hay, formerly of the 80s rock group Men at Work, one of my other Holy Trinity artists, with his 13th album and first album in 4 years, I Just Don't Know What to Do With Myself. Now, this one has, it is, as I said, a covers album. It's got so many great songs on here. The Burt Bacharach and Hal David song, I Just Don't Know What to Do With Myself, the title track, opens up the album. And he does, 2 Beatles covers on here, Norwegian Wood, as well as Across the Universe. Fantastic renditions of both of those. And also the Kinks' Waterloo Sunset, which I have come to really, really like since it was featured in a movie a few years ago. And let's see, Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying, the Searchers, I believe it was, that made that one famous back in the 60s. Wichita Lineman, which Glenn Campbell recorded a very famous version of. And I made notes on this, and I forgot to update the notes. Ooh La La, which is, I believe that was a Faces song. Yes. Come on, memory, work with me here. And Driving with the Brakes On, that is a more recent cover, and I can't remember who did that one. Oh, actually, Blind Faith. It was either Blind Faith or Delamitri, I think. Sorry. And but hey, I'm just talking about this album kind of scatterbrained because it is just such a good album. And the album closes with the Jimmy Cliff classic, Many Rivers to Cross. But I tell you, from front to back, this album is just fantastic. I mean, Colin Hay's voice is kind of like Doug McMillan of the Connells. It's one of those voices that I pretty much grew up with, actually more so in the case of Colin Hay, since I was listening to him 10 years before, well, not quite 10 years before, but a long time before the Connells. So yes, Colin Hay's voice is just like that old pair of shoes or that old sweater that you put on is just fantastic. And he doesn't really do any really daring and outside of the box arrangements on any of these songs. They stay fairly close to the originals, but just he gives them, as I said, with his voice, it adds so much texture with his voice to these songs. It is just, this album is not to be missed. I mean, it's covers, so if you don't like covers albums, even if you don't like covers albums, give this one a shot. And if you happen to like his voice, it's gotten a little bit weathered over the years just because, of all these years. He basically has not stopped recording since the 80s, since Men at Work. He's put out, this is his, what did I say, his 14th solo album or something like that. So yeah. So yes, his voice may be a little bit weathered, but that adds to its character, in my opinion. So just, yes, a fantastic covers album. I've said that more times than I should have probably, but I love it. It's definitely going to be in my top 20, maybe in my top 10. But the fact that it's a cover album, I try not to hold that against albums in terms of my year-end list, but also it depends on just how good the album is in general. Excuse me about that. Sorry about that. And now the last album I'll be talking about today, probably a good thing because my own voice is starting to waver a little bit. I'm just talking about Colin Hay's voice. My last Spankin Platter of this month, this quarter, is Love for Sale by Tony Bennett and Lady Gaga. I was so overjoyed when I heard that they were teaming up for a second album. I love their first one so much. I've been a Tony Bennett fan for a long time, and I have never been disappointed in his duets albums, from K.D. Lang to Diana Krall, and to, again, these two albums with Lady Gaga. And there's another one that I'm thinking of that I can't remember right now that he did that I really enjoy. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yes, fantastic. And this actually, I enjoyed this album even more than their first collaboration, because, and it would stand to reason, because since this is their second album, that their chemistry together is a little bit more tighter, and probably just because they've each gotten used to each other's cadences and rhythms and etc. and how they sing. And actually, it seems like another reason why I think this is actually better than their first effort is Gaga's voice has improved. I mean, it wasn't bad in their first covers album, their first collaboration album, and nor was the album awkward at all. I'm not saying that their first album was bad or anything in saying that this album is better. I'm not saying that, but it's just, as I said, they were together before, and so now they are used to each other in a way, I guess you'd say. But back to Gaga's voice, what I was saying about her voice being better than it was on the previous album. On that previous album, there were points here and there, like three or four points during the album, where she went a little bit overboard and exerted a little bit too much power on her voice. It seemed like she was going back to the contemporary pop diva gear, as opposed to the vocal jazz and Great American Songbook gear. But by the time they recorded this album, she had an extra nuance in her voice that, she knew how to dial it back. And I think that she did. In fact, I think I heard her say this in an interview, that she learned a lot from Tony Bennett on how to sing jazz standards. And so by the time they recorded this album, it was just fantastic. She has so much more nuance and is able to really finesse these songs and to a whole other level. I mean, I thought Gaga was good before, but this album, it just blows me away. I could name pretty much every song on here. I've Got You Under My Skin is one of my favorites from that whole period. I Get a Kick Out of You. It's excellent. Love for Sale, for some reason, in listening to this rendition of it, I mean, I've heard a dozen other renditions of it, but for some reason, it seemed a little bit, I don't know, hookery to me, a little bit prostitute-y, Love for Sale. I'm sure that it didn't mean that in the original context of the song, but and I don't know if it was just because my brain was in a certain state when I was listening to it here, but yeah, that song, it's never been one of my favorites. So, but it's just kind of this time when I heard it, it's kind of, the lyrics made me cringe just a little bit, but the performance is out of this world. Dream Dancing is one song that I had never heard before. I was not familiar with. And this is a salute to, Gershwin, I think. George and Ira Gershwin. I can't remember. But anyway, all the songs are by the same composer. I think it's Gershwin. But just one of those things is excellent. You're the Top is the album closer. That's wonderful. Night and Day. And as I said, I'm almost reciting the entire track listing. Oh, and by the way, this is the Target Deluxe Edition, so it has 2 bonus tracks that the original, that the regular version of the album doesn't have. So I might have named one of those 2 exclusive tracks in my talking about the track listing. But yes, fantastic, gorgeous album. I've always had a thing for the Great American Songbook. Nobody has ever done it better than Tony Bennett, in my opinion. Maybe Sinatra. But yeah, and as we all know, he has retired from performing. And I don't know if this is going to be his last album. I have a feeling it will be, because he is, I guess his health is not very good. So, but if this is his last album, he went out at the absolute top of his game. And I'm sure Gaga, and I think I heard this in an interview, Gaga was truly honored to have shared Tony Bennett's last album, if it is his last album, with him. So yes, as I said, Ray Charles went out at the top of his game with a great swan song duets album, a various artists duets album. So I'm thinking, in my opinion, Tony Bennett is going out on top again, if this proves to be his last album, with his album Love for Sale with Lady Gaga. So yeah. Well, those are my Spankin Platters reviews for today. And gosh, it's only halfway through the hour. So I think I might be cutting this video short. I'm a little bit tired tonight, but I was not too tired to bring this video to you guys. I wanted to, cover Spankin Platters because I got a lot of ground to cover the rest of this month. I was going to try and do 2 holiday videos or 1 supersized holiday video, but I think I'm going to have to scale that back to half of what I was going to do. So I'll be doing that. I've still got pretty much all of my bargain bag listening to do, and so I want to get that bargain bag done. I don't know if I'm, if I'm going to be doing a video Christmas weekend or not. I'm probably going to take that weekend off. So my list videos will probably be New Year's week/weekend. So yeah, as list videos usually are on the New Year's week. The end of the calendar year is the end of my list period. So yeah, that's when I bring them to you. So yes, my bargain bag grand finale of the Skips era bargain bag, that'll be coming up probably the final week of 2021. So yeah, I guess that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. Oh, actually, I was going to mention, unfortunately, on my ride home tonight, I was listening to an album. That's not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is I have found my 5th disappointing album of the year. So I will be doing my list of 5 biggest disappointments of the year that I tend to do during this season. I wasn't sure if I was going to have enough, but unfortunately, that has proven to be the case. So yes, and it was an album that I streamed it before I got it, and I thought it was just wonderful. And so I went out and bought the CD, listened to it through my music playing app with the MP3s on my phone on the ride home, and it lost something. I don't think any album has ever cooled off on me that quickly. So sad to say. I'm not going to spoil who it is, which album it is, but yeah. Anyway, I guess that's the way it goes sometimes. You expect albums to be fantastic, and they let you down. Fortunately, that doesn't happen a whole lot with me. So, but anyway, enough chit-chat unless you guys have any questions, you want to talk, or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. That'll do it for Spankin Platters for fall of 2021. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, hit that like button and share it with your friends. And give me your thoughts, questions, suggestions, or constructive criticisms in the comment section below. Also, scroll down to the description for the links to my Twitter and Instagram feeds, and links to my favorite fellow YouTubers who are all worth checking out. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and browse my past videos. And be sure to ring that notifications bell so you'll be the first to know each time I drop a new video. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next Friday. And remember, life's too short to be a music snob. See ya.